King Solomon is an intriguing figure because the Bible makes so many claims about him, controlling vast amounts of territory.
King Solomon's tomb wasn't supposed to be found. For nearly 5,000 years, it existed only as legend, buried somewhere beneath the ancient hills of Jerusalem, hidden under layers of dust, war, and forgotten history. Empires rose and fell, chasing whispers of its location, and every attempt ended the same way: empty, silent, unresolved. But now, something has changed. When archaeologist Eilat Mazar uncovered a mysterious structure near the heart of ancient Jerusalem, she didn't just see stone walls or ruins. She saw a pattern, one that echoed descriptions buried deep within biblical texts. What she found didn't just align with history. It challenged everything we thought we knew about it. Because this wasn't just another excavation. This discovery points to something far more unsettling, a connection between physical evidence and ancient scripture that many believed could never be proven. Beneath the broken ground, beneath centuries of doubt, something long hidden may have finally revealed itself. But here's the question no one is ready to answer. Did they really find the tomb of King Solomon? Or did they uncover something even older? Something history tried to erase? Before the truth disappears again, we need to look closer. So hit like and subscribe, because what was found might change the story of civilization itself. The legend of Solomon's lost tomb. They said it was just a myth until a forgotten tunnel changed everything. For centuries, people searched beneath the hills of Jerusalem, chasing rumors of a king buried with riches beyond imagination. A king whose name still resounds through time: Solomon. The man was known not just for his wisdom, but for building a kingdom so wealthy and so powerful that it left the ancient world in awe. Solomon stepped into power as a teenager, following in the footsteps of his father, King David. But he didn't just keep the kingdom alive, he transformed it. Trade exploded, gold poured in, and at the center of it all, he built the first temple. A 7-year masterwork, glowing with cedar from Lebanon, gold panels that caught the sun, and stone so perfectly cut, it barely needed mortar. The stories of his wise rulings are just as spectacular, like the one where 2 women claimed the same baby. Solomon offered to split the child in half, not out of cruelty, but to see who would give him up, and one did. That is how he found the real mother, his true mother. That single moment turned him into a symbol of justice and intelligence across the ancient world. Even the Queen of Sheba came to see him, bringing caravans heavy with spices, gold, and riddles. She left stunned. Not only had Solomon matched her questions, but he had outshone every rumor she had heard about him. His empire stretched far beyond Jerusalem. Ships sailed to Ophir and Tarshish. His mysterious lands, some believe, were in Africa or India, bringing ivory, apes, and riches. In southern Israel's Timnah Valley, copper mines he owned churned out wealth that archaeologists are still uncovering today. But one mystery has always remained. Where is Solomon's tomb? There is no stone marker, no chamber, nor is there anything to prove where he was laid to rest. Some swore it had to be beneath the Temple Mount. Others guessed secret caves or hidden chambers, sealed off for millennia. Over time, the search lost steam, with too many dead ends and too many legends, so that most experts had given up. No, it is just the appetizer of the 4th season. We're going to continue. But then something shifted. A discovery, accidental or fated, depending on who you ask, would crack this ancient riddle wide open. And what they found wasn't just a tomb. It was a message, buried in silence for 3,000 years, now clawing its way back into the light. The relentless quest for the tomb. A single crack in the earth, barely visible after a storm, changed everything. For centuries, finding King Solomon's tomb felt like chasing shadows. From medieval knights digging under the Temple Mount, to 19th century explorers tearing through the hills of Judea, every search ended the same way: empty. Some left convinced the tomb never existed, while others blamed it on bad luck, or worse, bad maps. By the time the 21st century rolled around, most experts had stopped looking altogether, but recently, something shifted. Dr. Emily Carter, an archaeologist known more for dusty scrolls than camera flashes, was deep in Jerusalem's archives when she spotted something unusual. tax records from Solomon's time. Buried in Old Hebrew text was a hint. Payments sent to a location kept off the books, a place near the city of David, a site so well hidden that even history forgot it existed. The city of David is the place that, if you take a shovel and you dig, you look underneath the ground, whatever you pull out of the ground is going to match the pages of the Bible. Armed with radar technology that could see through solid rock, her team began scanning a rugged slope in Silwan. The ground fought back with jagged limestone, unstable dirt, and constant delays from rising political tensions. But they pushed on, day after day, until nature stepped in. A sudden rainstorm loosened the hillside, revealing a shallow dip in the earth. Looking at that opening, there was something odd about it. It didn't belong. Beneath that spot, the radar lit up like a heartbeat. The radar spotted tunnels, not natural, but man-made and deep. The tunnel is carved into the rock at a depth of about 13 meters below the ground. The crew was awed, and excitement hit like lightning. The team scrambled to stabilize the site. Every dig was a risk. They also discovered that the tunnel was constructed with fake entrances, and a single misstep could cause centuries of secrets to collapse with the rock. Dr. Carter spent long nights decoding fragments of ancient writing, piecing together a trail left behind to confuse thieves or tomb raiders. Symbols pointed toward a hidden entrance, though not flashy, just smart, and quietly buried in plain sight. The major part of this structure is still hidden, needs to be excavated. What we have in hand is less than a quarter. I would say really much less. But that was not the real turning point. The turning point came when the team stumbled on a story, a half-forgotten tale passed down by shepherds, about a hillside that glowed under moonlight, a wall that sparkled like stars. Dr. Carter stood at the edge of the same hill. The ground was damp, their boots sinking with every step. But something about the silence, the way the rocks held still, like they were keeping secrets. It felt real. They were close. They could feel it. And just beyond that sealed tunnel, behind a doorway untouched for thousands of years, something was waiting to be found. What they discovered next didn't just rewrite history. It stopped them in their tracks, breaking the ancient seal. This week, archaeologists unveiling the long-lost tomb of an ancient king. What if the only thing standing between the modern world and a 3,000-year-old secret was a stone slab that wasn't meant to be opened? The seal didn't crack open quietly. It roared like something ancient had finally exhaled after millennia. After weeks of digging through jagged limestone, dust, and doubt, Dr. Emily Carter's crew had followed a paper trail from crumbling tax records to a forgotten hillside in Silwan. And now they stood before a stone slab, buried so deep in time that it felt like the earth itself had tried to hide it. But this wasn't just any rock in the dirt. It was a barrier, a warning, and a puzzle, all in one. Getting through it wasn't as simple as pushing or pulling. This thing was part of a larger design, one meant to protect whatever lay behind it. Hidden inside the narrow tunnel walls were fake paths and dead ends, some engineered to collapse the whole system if disturbed. This was old stonework, but it was genius-level defense, a trap set by people who expected grave robbers and outsmarted them all. While the ground creaked and shifted under their boots, Dr. Carter studied old Hebrew markings near the entrance. A sequence, 7 lines, 7 symbols, and a carved pattern tied to the first temple's 7-year construction. From the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem to a coming messianic king. It wasn't decoration. It was a clue. Her team got to work with laser tools and 3D scanners, mapping every groove and chamber like they were defusing a bomb. Tension hung in the air like thick fog. One wrong step could bury the entire team, literally. For 3 straight days, they adjusted levers, aligned gears, and held their breath every time stone scraped against stone. The deeper they got, the quieter the tunnel became, as if the mountain itself was listening. And then it happened. A heavy snap, a low rumble, and dust rained from the ceiling. The slab began to move, not fast, not clean, but enough to reveal a dark slit into something mystical. They backed away, staring into the black void. No sound came out, no breeze, just cold air and darkness. Working to prevent caves in the area from being looted, they filmed the moment of their discovery. Dr. Carter raised her hand, signaling the group to remain silent. No one spoke, no one moved. This was a breakthrough. It was the first breath of a story no one had told in thousands of years. But what was waiting in the shadows? Well, let's just say the tomb hadn't given up all its secrets yet, and the next step would leave even the skeptics stunned. A peek at Solomon's wealth. The moment the flashlight beam hit gold, everything stopped. No talking, no breathing, just the quiet shock of realizing they weren't chasing a myth anymore. They were standing in it. Deep beneath the city of David, in a sealed chamber untouched for thousands of years, Dr. Carter's team stood shoulder to shoulder, flashlights trembling in their hands. What they were seeing wasn't a rumor. It wasn't folklore. It was treasure, piled, stacked, tucked into corners like it had been waiting. Along the walls sat golden vessels, their surfaces carved with ancient Hebrew, flashing as though they had just been polished. The room smelled of thyme, spices, and resins, something earthy and sweet that clung to the air. At the far end, a 7-branch menorah rose from the floor, heavy and perfect. Its curves, its base, everything matched what the first temple supposedly held. But this wasn't a museum replica. This was real, possibly original. And it was just the beginning. Everywhere they looked, the chamber whispered stories. Fragments of silk, faded but unmistakable, hinted at trade routes stretching all the way to India. Delicate ivory carvings spoke of deals made across African kingdoms. Small jewelry boxes, some still latched, held earrings and chains studded with emeralds, rubies, and lapis. One archaeologist, overwhelmed, leaned in and muttered, "This makes the British Museum look like a thrift shop." Even more stunning, a sealed clay jar cracked open, releasing a puff of scent, saffron, frankincense, and something citrusy. Spices so fresh, it was like time had just paused. It felt almost too perfect, like someone had planned it all to be found. But not everything added up. Some pieces had symbols no one could place. The style on a few items looked newer, or maybe just different. Could they belong to Rehoboam, Solomon's son, or another ruler who stashed his wealth alongside a legend? The excitement was real, but so was the doubt. And in a room like that, doubt echoes loudly. Still, every item, each jewel, each carving told a different story. And together, they painted a picture that felt straight out of scripture. But as dazzling as it was, the chamber felt like a trailer to something bigger. So the team moved carefully. Laser scanners mapped every surface. Not one artifact was touched without documentation, because one wrong step, one clumsy hand, could erase what the desert had guarded for centuries. The menorah alone could rewrite what we know about the temple, but no one was celebrating just yet, because they knew they had come for a tomb. And this place didn't look like one, but everyone could feel it. This chamber wasn't the end of the story. It was just the first layer. And whatever was deeper had been buried for a reason. The unexplainable symbols and hidden knowledge. The gold was stunning, but the writing on the walls, that's what really stopped them in their tracks. Still buzzing from the treasure chamber, Dr. Carter's team shifted their focus to something far stranger. But hidden with them were biblical treasures, the like of which Israel has not seen in over half a century. Torchlight revealed a cluster of markings carved into the stone. Symbols that didn't just decorate the walls, they seemed to hum with meaning. Right in the center was a star-shaped seal, sharp and deliberate, almost identical to the one described in ancient texts as the Mark of Solomon. Not just a king's emblem, but according to legend, a magical tool used to command spirits. And it didn't stop there. The carvings ran in tight geometric lines, some simple, others layered in spirals and angles so precise they looked like blueprints. One archaeologist whispered, "This is math, but not just temple measurements. This is next-level stuff." Some symbols mapped out ratios, angles, and architecture so detailed that it made the 10th century BCE feel suspiciously futuristic. Even Dr. Carter joked, "We came looking for a tomb and found Solomon's calculus notebook. Then came the tablets, stacked in the corner like they were waiting to be read. A set of clay tablets carrying dense Hebrew script, some faded, others perfectly engraved. One described temple dimensions almost word for word from the book of 1 Kings. But another was different. The language twisted, the structure broke rules. It read more like a riddle than a record. This tablet referenced something odd, a key tied to hidden knowledge. Dr. Carter paused. Was it a nod to the mystical key of Solomon? A text tied to rituals and ancient codes long dismissed as myth? No one said it out loud, but the thought was there. What if these weren't just instructions for building something? What if they were hiding something? Then someone spotted it. A chest tucked inside a dark opening in the wall, nearly missed, roughly the size of a carry-on bag. It looked heavy, sealed with metal latches, and carved with the same star symbol from the wall. There were no hinges or obvious locks. You could feel the air shift as the team crowded around. No one touched it. Opening it was risky. Too risky. But the temptation was thick. Was this where Solomon kept the real secrets? Could it point to the Ark of the Covenant? Or would it just open a door to more questions? And just when they thought it couldn't get any stranger, someone spotted a detail in the carvings, one that didn't match anything they had seen so far. A symbol, out of place and out of time. That's when the whole story took a sharp turn. The academic firestorm. We're going to continue, and very soon we're going to find something really very important and very special over there. It wasn't the treasure or the menorah that cracked the world open. It was a single sentence, carved into stone, that sounded like Solomon, speaking from the grave. Dr. Carter's team had just finished deciphering the strange star-shaped carvings when they spotted it, tucked along the tomb's eastern wall, barely visible in the torchlight. 5 lines in ancient Hebrew, smooth by time, but still sharp enough to stir a chill. It read, "May wisdom guide my hand as stars guide sailors." That line hit hard, not just because it echoed the poetic tone of Proverbs, but because it sounded personal, like someone, maybe Solomon himself, was leaving behind an instruction meant to survive centuries of silence. The tent back at base camp lit up with noise as laptops pinged, phones rang, and photos of the inscription zipped across continents. By the time the sun rose over Jerusalem, the academic world was already on fire. Some experts hailed it as the smoking gun. The writing style, the language, the location, all of it matched Solomon's reign, right down to the 970 to 931 BCE dating from the chamber walls. They pointed to earlier finds, the menorah, the trade goods, the architectural notes, and said this was it, the missing link, the man behind the myth. But not everyone was buying it. Critics jumped in fast, tearing the evidence apart piece by piece. They questioned the carving's authenticity. Some even said the wording felt too polished, too perfect. Others noticed faint symbols near the prayer that looked Persian, suggesting someone centuries later could have carved it to mimic Solomon's voice. Inside conference halls and online forums, it was chaos. Professors argued over each other on live streams. Journal editors delayed publications to weigh new theories, and headlines screamed everything from Solomon found to holy hoax. And right in the middle of it all, Dr. Carter stood calmly. We didn't set out to find a king, but the clues kept piling up. If that's not worth investigating, what is? Every line of that inscription felt heavier now, more than just words. It hinted at a king wrestling with power, staring at the stars for guidance, and possibly, just possibly, leaving behind the only first-person trace of his rule. But there was still one problem. If the carving was real, then who or what was locked inside that final sealed chamber just ahead? Because Solomon's name might have stirred debate, but what the team would find next would silence everyone. A discovery that shakes beliefs. One name carved into stone sparked a storm that reached far beyond archaeology. Just days after decoding that haunting prayer, possibly penned by Solomon himself, Dr. Carter's team stumbled on something even more explosive. Near the back of the chamber, under a thin layer of dust, was a fresh set of inscriptions, ancient Hebrew, chiseled with care, describing a royal visit in 950 BCE from the Queen of Sheba. The moment they translated her name, it felt like time stopped, because this wasn't just another biblical reference. This was the exact story told in the book of 1 Kings and the Quran. Solomon and Sheba, 2 figures separated by history, yet revered in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, were now possibly united in stone. Rabbis huddled over Torah scrolls. Imams compared passages from the 27th chapter of Surah, priests whispered over weathered Bibles. The carving didn't just match scripture, it seemed to bring it to life, like a bridge made of stone spanning millennia. But for every believer celebrating, a scholar was raising an eyebrow. Some called the timing too perfect. Others pointed to stylistic abnormalities in the carving, symbols that didn't quite match the 10th century BCE. Could it have been added later? A tribute by a devoted scribe, or worse, a forgery meant to fuel religious flames? Tension flared fast. Online panels turned into shouting matches. Some Islamic scholars argued the tomb's wealth clashed with how the Quran described Solomon. Wise, yes, but never indulgent. Meanwhile, political leaders in Jerusalem argued over who had a claim to the site. Religious lines, already tight, began to pulse with new heat. But beneath the noise, something deeper stirred. Because the carvings implied more than a royal visit, they hinted at an alliance, trade, diplomacy, and shared knowledge between two ancient giants. And if that really happened, it could mean the sacred stories aren't just spiritual, they're historical. Still, the question remained, were these inscriptions telling the truth, or telling us what we wanted to hear? And just when the debate hit a boiling point, the team discovered something tucked inside a sealed alcove behind the Sheba wall. Not another inscription, not a crown. Something that could change everything again. And it wasn't meant to be found. A king's seal, unearthed. It wasn't another carving. It wasn't a scroll. It was something smaller, but heavier than all the others. Folded in the corner of the chamber, behind a cracked stone table no one had touched in centuries, lay a gold ring, thick, solid, and unmistakably royal. At first it looked like just another buried ornament, but then the light caught it. Carved into the face of the ring was a six-pointed star. Now, this wasn't some modern symbol pulled from today's flag. This was rough, hand-carved, and ancient, but it bore just enough of a resemblance to the Star of David to stop the entire room cold. Lab tests would later confirm it. The metallurgy lined up perfectly with the 10th century BCE. But even before that, the whispers started. Was this Solomon's ring, his royal seal, the same one that might have stamped trade pacts with Phoenicia, letters to Sheba, decrees that shaped the kingdom of Israel? Then it dawned on them. This wasn't just a ring, it was a signature. Still, caution crept in. Some experts warned that similar rings had turned up from the 8th century BCE. Mostly linked to King Hezekiah. The Star of David wasn't widely known until much later in Jewish tradition. So, was this a fluke, a family heirloom, or had Solomon adopted the symbol long before history recorded it? The team hunched over microscopes, scanning the seal's edges with laser precision. Each groove, each scratch, was debated like it held the answer to everything. Handling it was no joke either. Micro tools, oxygen-controlled cases, days of cleaning, without ever actually touching the thing. One wrong breath, and it could crumble. But the risk was worth it, because if this ring truly belonged to Solomon, it could be the first direct link between his hand and the world he ruled. And just as the team began to believe they'd found the crown jewel of the site, they heard something. A faint echo, like stone shifting, or something stirring. Because just behind the seal's resting place was another wall, and behind that, well, no one was ready for what they'd find next. Echoes of Solomon's music. Just behind the wall that held the golden seal, they found a song. At first glance, it looked like more script carved into the stone, but as the dust cleared and their flashlights swept over the surface, the pattern stood out. Repeating marks, rhythmic spacing, and small symbols that looked less like words and more like sound. Dr. Carter leaned in, squinting. She whispered to her team, "These aren't prayers, they're notes." The team froze. On that cold limestone wall, buried for 3,000 years, was what looked like a musical score. And not just any music. This was complex, layered, and carved with symbols linked to ancient instruments, harps, lyres, and maybe even flutes. One marking clearly resembled the 10-stringed harp tied to King David. And according to the book of 1 Chronicles, chapter 25, Solomon had inherited not just a throne, but a symphony. Outside the chamber, music historians were already debating what they were seeing. Some said the style matched early Hebrew traditions. Others claimed it looked suspiciously Babylonian, too advanced and too clean to be from the time of Solomon. Back at the site, one of the interns plucked out the markings on a replica harp. It was crude and hesitant, but something about the pattern gave everyone chills. These weren't just notes. They were instructions for worship. Still, the excitement came with doubt. Were these carvings authentic? Could they be from a later ruler trying to honor or imitate Solomon's court? Some markings bore a hint of Persian flair. Others were impossible to date cleanly. But regardless of origin, the effect was the same. For a moment, the tomb didn't feel like a grave. It felt alive. The inscriptions were scanned with lasers and logged with microscopic care. One wrong touch, one breath too close, and centuries of music could vanish. But even the risk couldn't stop the team from chasing the sound. And as the last note faded, the chamber had one more surprise, tucked just beneath the carved score, sealed tight in the wall. It wasn't music, nor a map, and it pointed somewhere even deeper, maybe the truth, the tomb itself. Is this really where King Solomon was buried? Or are we standing at the edge of something far more mysterious? After all the golden rings, the ancient melodies etched into stone, and inscriptions that echo through time, this is the part no one expected. There was no body, not even a trace, no bones, no sarcophagus, no final proof. Just silence where history promised a king. Despite the viral headlines and bold claims, the truth is far more unsettling. Yes, the chamber is real. The artifacts are undeniable. Every detail points directly to the era of Solomon. But this wasn't a tomb, at least not yet. Inside a secured tent near the city of David, Dr. Carter and her team sit surrounded by scans, fragments, and fading clues. What they've uncovered may be something else entirely, a royal archive, or a hidden shrine tied to a king whose legacy refuses to stay buried. The menorah carvings, the harp symbols, even inscriptions linked to the Queen of Sheba, they all whisper the same name, Solomon. But without a body, it's like finding a crown, with no king, and that's where the mystery deepens. AI scans, kept under strict restriction, hint at something beneath the surface, hollow spaces, perfect geometric patterns carved into the bedrock, hidden chambers, or something we don't yet understand. But no one can dig, not here, not now. The ground near the Temple Mount isn't just earth. It's a political, religious, and historical fault line. So the team waits, because if those chambers are real, then this might only be the beginning. And somewhere, beneath layers of stone and time, the truth about Solomon may still be waiting to be uncovered. What do you think? Did they find the edge of Solomon's tomb, or something even bigger? Comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe before the next chamber is revealed.